Welcome, Walnut. I'm Lara, but you can call me Laz, your host for Walnut Wednesday. This is your reminder to be brave, be yourself, and know that you can make the world a better place just by what you decide today. Here, I'm going to share my weekly walnuttings with you on a Wednesday. Hello, Walnut. It is me, Laz, here for another episode of Walnut Wednesday. And this week, I am very excited to introduce to you a new guest, Breanne, who is a mindset and confidence coach. Welcome, Breanne.
Thank you so much. I am so excited to be here.
I am so excited to have you here. I would love, Breanne, if you could give a little introduction of yourself, and then I'm probably going to ask you all the nosy questions about how you got to where you are now. So introduce yourself for us, please, Breanne.
I love it. I'm here for the nosy questions. So as you said, my name is Breanne. I am a mindset and confidence coach. I am located in Toronto, Canada, and I've been on a bit of a self-development journey for several years, which I'm sure we will dive into. And I've been running my coaching business for about 2 years. I also have a podcast called the Goal Digger Guide podcast, where again, I talk all things like tips, tricks, and takeaways, self-development. So if you're looking for anything there, please head over. And that's pretty much where I'm at right now. I also used to teach yoga, which again was a part of this story in regards to how I got to where I am today. So I pretty much just dove right in, was introduced to the self-development world, and I've never really looked back. And from there, I've peeled back a lot of layers, grown, changed, rebirthed, all of the things that which has ultimately brought me here today.
I love it. I love it. And it is such a fun, albeit emotional journey to start diving into really looking at yourself and looking in the mirror sometimes, isn't it?
Oh, it is so emotional. It's ongoing emotional. And so it's really funny because oftentimes when you start to look at things, and there's different waves of this, right? Like highs are highs and lows are lows. When you start to really look at yourself in the mirror, start to look back at like your triggers in your past and start to really understand how you self-identify as you do today, it is emotionally, it requires a lot from you emotionally, but also then it's like you're open up, right? You're like, here I am, I'm raw, I'm real, I'm like ready to take on the world with all of my emotions. But then it's like you have to go in and regulate your emotions. So you go from having your walls up, your guards up, to protecting you from your external reality, right? Because that's all the programming that we've done over our entire lifetime up until this date. And then you like break down those walls to be like this vulnerable, emotional child. And then you actually have to learn to go in and regulate it. So it's quite the process.
Yeah. And I have found on my walnut journey as well, Breanne, and I don't know if you're the same, but sometimes even just shining a light on that little, I imagine like a little bird that's fallen out of the nest when you were talking, like you're just like this little like baby who's just like, I don't know what to do. But sometimes even just shining a light on like, hey, I actually am feeling like the little bird that fell out of the nest, makes it seem less big and less overwhelming. Like it's a starting point. So I always like encourage the celebration of just noticing. That's the best first step that you could possibly do, is just to notice and shine a light.
100%. And it is such a big step, just even recognizing that you want to do the work, that you want to connect deeper to yourself. You want to understand your triggers. You want to show up ultimately as a better person in the world and lead by example. That alone is a massive step that so many people aren't even willing to face or acknowledge for whatever reason that may be. So I am a big encourager of celebrating like every win, no matter how small. Everything deserves a celebration. And I think that's something that people should start to feel a lot more open to and more comfortable with, because you deserve to be celebrated every damn day.
I love it. Yes. So Walnut, when you're listening to this, obviously you are here for a little bit of that kind of reason, and you're already probably shining a light on those little things. So just take a little second right now, press pause, and just like jiggle your little button, celebrate yourself for just being here. And also, I'm really grateful and thankful for your time. And I'm sure, Breanne, you are too.
100%. I absolutely am.
So let's just go back to I would like to know, I'm always curious how you got here, because I am and the walnuts listening, no, I am still a fusion of kind of your industry. I wouldn't call I don't identify as a coach, but I'm kind of fusing into the online world while also working a 9 to 5 corporate job a little bit as well. So I'm always curious to know how you got here, like the brave, courageous steps that it takes to be like getting to identifying as a confidence coach. And the word confidence for me, I'm going to question you about it soon, but the word confidence just has so many identifications that come with it. That's not the wrong word, but you know what I mean. It comes loaded with ideology. So I would love to know, first of all, Breanne, how did you get to where you are now? Let's start there.
Yeah. Okay. So we're going back a little bit in time for storytelling. I will try to make this as digestible as possible. So I would say, again, as previously noted, my self-development journey started about several years ago. I was studying in university. My third year of university, I decided to do an exchange abroad. So at that time, I was just studying at a local university. So I was like working and living with my parents still. So I wasn't really getting the whole like living away from home experience. And so I decided to do an exchange abroad, and I went and studied in Sweden. From there, I didn't really go to class. I didn't really go to class. It was pretty much like a pass or fail situation. So yeah, that was good as long as I passed. And I pretty much just like bounced around Europe, traveled a ton, met a ton of people. But the thing was, like, I am from a smaller town. I'm actually from Niagara Falls.
Oh, wow.
In Ontario. Yeah. So I assume it's so funny because I could say Niagara Falls is a small town in Canada, but most people around the world knows where it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I grew up there. So, but it is quite a small population, and it's not that common for people to leave. It's a really great town to kind of grow up in because you have work from a very young age, just because of the hospitality industry and the tourism industry. So people just kind of settle down there, which is really great. And there's a number of opportunities there. But so for me to go away was a big deal at the time. I would have been maybe 8. How old was I? No, I was older than that. I was like 19-ish. Oh, right. So 19, 20 maybe. So I went away. I didn't know a single person in the country, the continent. Like, I didn't know anybody. So I grew a ton while being there, and I really started to get a feel for what I like, what I didn't like. Also, I started to recognize like how resilient I was and what I was capable of in ways that I felt small back home. And fast forward, I extended that, and then I went on a backpacking trip to South America, and then I came home about 9 months later. I then finished my last year of university at home. And just a side note about that, my first 2 years of university, I was honestly really miserable. Like, I was really unhappy, and I just always felt like I kind of dropped the ball going to a university that was a local university, only in the sense because I wasn't having this experience, and I felt like I was capable of so much more. And I was realizing this like in my young adolescence. Like, I was like, something is not clicking here. However, I also am a big believer of you kind of dealing with the deck of cards that you've been dealt. I'm a big advocate for life is not fair, and stop trying to make it fair, because it isn't, right? And people have been dealt different decks of cards in their life, and some are really unfortunate and some are really great. And it's really what you choose to do with what you've been given. So understanding this, I kind of learned that lesson while being away on my exchange. I came home for my final year of university. It was actually the best year I had back home, because I decided to like get involved, do an internship, and like get involved in the community. And it was really great. And then I didn't even go to my I graduated, but I didn't go to my graduation. And
oh my gosh.
And then I went and decided to do the whole like eat, pray, love thing. And so I went to Dubai. I traveled Southeast Asia. I was supposed to only go for like, again, 9 months, and I came back like 2 years later. I lived in Australia for a year, so I was quite close to you. So that was great. Yeah. Yeah. So from there, okay, so anyone that has traveled, or maybe if you haven't traveled, you understand that there is a lot of learning experiences that come with that. Like, again, highs are highs, lows are really low. And there was good chunks of that at the time that I did solo. I had a partner at the time. We'd been together for like almost 6-7-ish years. But there were times that I was traveling solo, which was a really great experience. So then I came home. At this point, I'm like in my mid-20s. Okay. So I'm just giving a timeline for the walnuts that are listening so they understand like where I'm at. So I'm in my mid-20s. I come home and I like felt I was really lost because at this point, like my friends are getting married, they're buying houses, like they're doing all the things. And I'm just like, I'm broke as fuck. Like there's zero money to my name because I paid for my own schooling. I paid for my own travels. Like, oh my gosh, just I'm like, I'm so broke. I don't know what I'm doing. I kind of had an epiphany. And out of nowhere, I also decided to end the relationship that I was in. Although it was a good relationship and we never had any issues. And it was actually quite shocking, I think, to people around me in my life when I did it. I just honestly came to terms it's not what I wanted. And everything was already like, I was so confused. I was like, might as well just add this additional confusion on top. So
well, yeah, you had already done the eat, pray, loving. So it like made sense to, close that chapter of your life. Yeah.
And it's really funny because I really didn't see it coming. I'm like, when I say epiphany, I literally am talking about like, I woke up and made a decision. It was really strange. So that happened. And in order to, so when I became single, my friends, naturally, hopefully you all have good groups of friends, good groups of girlfriends, but they were very excited I was single because they're like, Bree's never been single. Like, what does this mean? Like, this is so exciting. And even at that time, I was about like 26 at this time. I was like, the last thing I want to do is date. Like the only thing I want to do is date myself. That's literally all I wanted to do. So what I did was I worked during the week in a gym. On weekends, I worked at a nightclub to save up money. So I saved up $5,000 cash to put myself through a yoga teaching certification. Might I add, I had no interest in teaching yoga. I just knew I needed to like put my ass through a ringer and like really figure it out. And this training changed my life. I know it's really dramatic, but I honestly felt like I was training to be a Navy SEAL because it was like a 2-week super intensive retreat where you're at like an ashram. You don't see any outside world. You're only with the people you're training with. Like everything is together, like showers, meals, where you're sleeping, and everything is scheduled. Like, and that doesn't sound like intense, but like, think of all the choices that you have, like when you eat, when you have a snack, like when you want to do this, when you want alone time, like that doesn't exist. And it would literally be training from like 6 a.m. to like midnight every day. It was insane. Wow. And it changed me forever. And then I started to get things together. From there, I started teaching yoga. I moved to Toronto. I met my now current partner. And then I started to work a corporate job. And although it was really great to a degree, like that it was providing me stability and a stable income, I also worked different side hustles, like some other side hustles online and teaching yoga. And I felt like I was in this hamster wheel and I'm like, what the fuck is this? Like I'm working an insane amount and I feel like I'm not paying off anything. Like I'm at this point, because I've moved to the city, it's more expensive, right? So I'm paying off debt I'm paying off a little bit of debt. And then I'm paying off my rent and like my car payments and whatever. So I wasn't fulfilled. I'm like, how was I able to live in like a hostel in like in Byron Bay and have like a budget of like $20 a day and feel so content and happy and like connected to myself and other people? And then I come back here and I'm just like so lost. And might I add, there's been some time since then. At that point I was about 27, 28, and I started to realize there's absolutely nothing wrong with the corporate world. There's nothing wrong with the 9-to-5. There's nothing wrong with climbing the corporate ladder. As long as you feel fulfilled, you're working for a company you feel aligned with. It provides a lot of stability and security. And as long as you feel good about it, there is something that is nice about structure. So not to hate on that at all, because I think there's something online where it's like financial freedom, do whatever the hell you want. And And it's like, there is something beautiful with like working full time and like also figuring your like side hustle or whatever you want to do on the side in the meantime. You know, there's something great about that. You don't have to go balls to the wall, be like, no, this or nothing. Like I'm so resistant to that lifestyle. And I feel like that's really romanticized online. So I don't want to give that impression for those that are listening. And through a lot of like, I don't want to drag the story on too long. So through a lot of learnings, a lot of lessons, ultimately, I quickly learned that I wanted to get into the coaching world. It's something that I'd always kind of been intrigued about. And I think it's something that I always wanted to do, but I didn't necessarily know it was an opportunity or like a career, or I really understood the concept of being an entrepreneur. Like, and so with all that, that's kind of brought me to where I am today. Through all of the lessons, I became certified in different modalities. And I've worked with various mentors. And of course, my experience with my yoga certification is just like a beautiful add-on to understanding how to hold space and supporting people through that process. Right. So that is where I am today.
Oh my gosh. I have so many. This is why I love Walnut Wednesday so much, because I get to have these conversations with amazing people who I would have probably never, ever come across. And first of all, travel will always have a place in my heart, and many of the Walnuts listening, their hearts as well. And we talk about it quite often. There is something so liberating about traveling outside of your bubble. And yeah, I'm not going to get into that, but I just want to give you some praise about the journey that you have been on. And it actually just like makes me feel warm and fuzzies, because to go on holiday, and then with the COVIDs, everything is like, the whole world has sort of changed and made travel a little bit less accessible to some people. And so I was like daydreaming while you were speaking of all your wonderful experiences. And Brie, I also wanted to touch on, I'm really glad that you raised the idea that, you know, working in corporate is actually not a bad thing, because I'm seeing an influx of the online space being like, I've gone back to my corporate job, and there's this stigma that you need to, like you say, drop everything and do this make big moves and quit your job, and you know, that's going to bring you this like fulfillment and bravery. And while that has worked for some people, for others, such as me, the baby steps are the things that are like that actually still bring that big liberation along with everything you do. And there's nothing wrong with playing a really long game and doing little steps at a time, rather than taking a huge leap as it kind of comes up. So there is space for both, and I'm just really glad that you touched on that. I'd love to know about confidence and how you came to this label of confidence coach. So Breanne, can you tell me what confidence looks like to you as a starting point?
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of like a two-part question. First of all, confidence to me more so feels like a lot of truly authentic, deep-rooted self-trust. You have a lot of trust in yourself, a lot of trust that you'll figure it out, that things are unfolding how they're supposed to, that you're learning the lessons that are required. If you're not getting what you want, it's because you're getting what you need. You trust yourself enough to make the decision. You trust yourself enough to know that you look fucking real good in your outfit and you don't need to send it to 10 people for approval. You trust yourself enough to make a decision about a career move or something that you want to do in your life without going to everyone for their advice, because you rely on A, that external validation, B, you rely on what other people tell you, what they think would be good for you. Because we, again, are so programmed to do that. And there's nothing wrong when people want to share advice, but you have to understand that people are very much sharing the advice from the perspective of like what they think you should do. But like realistically, who gives a fuck? Like, who cares? Like it's not necessarily relevant. However, I do always, when speaking with clients and something that I talk about in my course is that it's very important to understand like who you go to for advice. And it's usually should honestly be a very select individual, maybe two individuals that you look up to, because they are leading a life that you want to be living. Like for me, for example, it would not make sense to be asking someone for advice that works in a bank and is looking to take over like a bank in Canada, right? Like super corporate, like very financial heavy, like has no interest in spirituality, extremely structured, which is absolutely great. And that's probably really fulfilling. And they probably feel really badass in that role. But would that make sense for me to ask them for advice? Probably not, because they are not leading a life that I want to live. So self-trust is honestly the biggest component of confidence. And I don't think a lot of people realize that. And so that is ultimately my definition. Secondly, for your other part of your question, you were ultimately asking how I came into specifically being a confidence coach, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So ultimately, I came into this because of probably my own experiences, I would assume. Naturally, it's funny because like not necessarily a lot of people have asked me this particular question, which is kind of shocking. But I think it honestly results in my own experiences. I think I've had a pretty cushy life, like I think I've been given, again, as I said, like a pretty good deck of cards. I was pretty decent at a lot of things in my life. Like I was pretty decent at sports. I was okay at school. I was a go-getter. Like I'd always want to be on student council and like pushing boundaries. I was always willing to put myself out there. I got from a young age, now this dates me, from a very young age of like 13, I got into modeling, which at the time was like a big thing. It wasn't like influencer and stuff. There was no like online stuff. I'm talking like actual modeling, like an editorial and whatnot. Not that it was necessarily for me in the long run, but like something like that was like very cool. And I know that type of opportunity doesn't just come to anybody, especially with like the stereotype maybe back then. Now it's different, which is great. But so there were things that I know I had some sense of privilege. Like I'm not blind to that.
Yeah.
However, that doesn't change how I felt when I was younger. You know what I mean? Like even though logically I can understand that, I understand that people have worse circumstances, have worse things to worry about. Like it doesn't necessarily change how you feel when you're growing up, right? And I think I actually was a lot more insecure than people realize. And I think because always people associated me with being confident because I would push boundaries, it was like expected of me, when you're told like you're funny. So you're like, oh, I got to be funny all the time.
Yeah. You get labeled with what you are and you're like, oh, now I have to play to this at all times.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. Exactly. It was so funny. This one time when I was working my old job in Toronto, so maybe a couple of years ago, I was out for lunch with a friend and I was talking to him about something. I was like, yeah, I kind of feel insecure about that. Like a super common, natural thing to say. I was talking about, I think in my relationship and I was overthinking something at the time or whatever it may be. And he turned around and was like, I could never picture you being insecure. And I just was like, that's so crazy that you would think that. Like, of course I have insecurities. Like you know what I mean? So I think I always felt the need to put on this front because it was expected of me. And that in itself is exhausting. Yeah. Like that is exhausting because you're not really showing up as your authentic self. You're not actually allowing people to see the real you. And I think that would then show up in more close-knitted, meaningful relationships, like romantic partners or even my best friends. Like I wouldn't necessarily show real sides of them because I was expected to be a certain way. I was always expected to be always expected to have my shit together. And And this started to really unfold, as I said, when I kind of came back from my travels in my mid-20s. And then I went to this yoga training and I peeled back all these layers, and I realized how I like self-identified, and I ended this relationship. And I'm just like, dude, I don't even know who I am. Like, I don't even know necessarily how I feel. I don't know how to, I always used to do the whole like fake it till you make it thing. And I was like, I don't know how to show like the real me, and then show the real me, and then not regret showing the real me.
Yeah.
So it actually all very much came because I had that experience myself, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And like, I actually just feel like labeling yourself that in the first instance is like incredibly like taking a layer off and being like, look at me, because I'm embodying it. You can kind of do it too. Did you just decide like, I'm a confidence coach, or did it come
not necessarily? Yeah. No, I didn't wake up one day and was like, I'm a confidence coach. No, that didn't happen. Life would be pretty easy if stuff like that happened though. No, so I think upon my receiving my yoga certification and starting to like hold space for people and really step into that leadership role, like seeing myself in that role was a big contributor to it. And then upon becoming a certified life and success coach. And then I became certified in other modalities like EFT, NLP, which I can explain shortly if you'd like.
Sure.
That, like all of that in my learnings and experiences from traveling and understanding my own story, because I actually at that point literally had like a blueprint of my life and how, again, I self-identified in my own process and my own experience. I was able to understand, like, I actually have never truly felt really confident. I never have necessarily really, really trusted myself, to the extent that I think I'm capable of. And upon learning how to do that, I was just like, more people need to learn how to do this. Like, more people need to understand this, because if I feel this way, there's sure as hell got to be a lot of other women that feel this way.
Well, I think it just comes with, like, when you say the word, I don't think anyone actually really knows genuinely. That's why I asked your opinion as well. No one really knows what confidence actually means, because even the people who look the most confident, like you've already alluded to, they don't necessarily like feel like what they are seen as on the inside. So it's actually like this whole like multi-layered thing. And it's reminding me, a friend of mine, Claire, she's been on the podcast as well. We had this discussion about confidence, and she was like, I am a courageous person. Like, I am courageous all the time. But she said, I am not brave. And so, like, it's reminding me of what a coach kind of talks to, and she says that confidence is courage compounded. So it's being courageous lots and lots of times. And that makes you brave by continuing to be courageous, right? So yeah. I love this discussion all about it, and I'm so glad that you've come to that conclusion and are wanting to like share that with the world. But if you would love to go into the modalities that you've trained in, I'd love to hear what you have to say on that, particularly because a lot of people that I follow are not necessarily like qualified in the things. So people say like, you don't need to have a certificate in this, and then other people are like, I'm fully certified, so that means you should work with me. So I'd love your take on the things, because I have qualifications in particular modalities as well, and it's more of a me thing, right? It's not for me to like tell everyone or whatever. It's more of like I actually did that for, similar to your yoga training, right? It was like a part of the Walnut journey itself. So over to you, Brie. I'd love to hear what you have to say on that part.
Yeah. So I totally agree with what you're saying in regards to people becoming certified in different modalities and areas, and some not, and then leveraging both opinions as like a means to necessarily connect with people, which is fine. I personally only became certified because it felt right to my own journey, but also because at this time when I went to do that and I made that investment, I knew I wanted to build a business and I knew I wanted to work with clients. And I personally wanted to be certain that I could get them the results they desire. So I wanted to be sure that I would literally under promise and over deliver. I'm like, hey, work with me. It'll be great, whatever. And then always over deliver. Like always people come out the other side like, holy fuck, that was life transformational. Like I knew I wanted to give that to people. So that was my whole purpose behind becoming certified.
Yeah.
And then secondly, so I became certified as a life and success coach, EFT, in NLP and hypnosis, and time technique, which all ultimately fall under NLP, neuro linguistic programming. So have you spoken about this before? Are you familiar with this?
Familiar, but please, for the Walnut who don't know what it is, please definitely tell us.
Okay, cool. So ultimately, NLP is all about how we have the ability to tap in and rewire our subconscious mind. So we are only actually consciously aware of about like 5, maybe 10% of like our mind's capability realistically, and our subconscious is the remainder. However, in our subconscious mind, you want to look at it almost like a filing cabinet. It literally stores and remembers every single thing, situation, feeling, experience you've ever had in your entire life, right? So it stores literally everything in your life. So with that being said, it then creates your core belief system based on all these memories, all of these experiences. However, because we don't remember everything from our childhood and even from last week and different extreme emotions we've had, this is why things come up, like where you feel triggered, where your friend or your partner will say something and you immediately are just like, I'm like 10 out of 10 rage. Like I could go batshit crazy. Like, and it's like, this situation at hand isn't really a big deal. This isn't like, I don't understand why I'm making this such a big deal, but it's ultimately because it's associated to a past feeling or a memory or a time that this was said and then you were really hurt afterwards. So ultimately, it's all about this idea of going in and rewiring our subconscious mind. Now, EFT, let's use EFT because it's probably the modality that I use the most with myself and with other clients, is emotional freedom technique. And it's a very simple technique that is very, very effective. It's ultimately tapping. So instead of like, it's kind of associated like acupuncture, which most people know what that is. And we refer to it as acupressure. So it's tapping like on different areas of your body to release energy points. So it's tapping on different modalities. And ultimately what it does is it helps you go in, get to the root feeling of a situation, circumstance, limiting belief, release that, and then you can go and replace it with an affirmation that will actually support you, right? To level up or overcome a fear or overcome a circumstance and really let something go. So those are all housed under NLP. And as I said, EFT is like a very common modality that I use.
I love it. My partner and I call it the tappy tap. It's just such a nice thing to do at the end of the day. Sometimes it's so beautiful. I actually recently recorded a podcast episode about how I don't do daily affirmations anymore. Like I just realized, oh my gosh, I've stopped doing them. And I fully just believe all the things that I have been telling myself for all these years. But yeah, the tappy taps is a beautiful way to still have them as a practice. But not. I
love that. The tappy tap. That's cute. That's really cute.
Thank you so much for sharing. And Walnut, I will put all of the details in the show notes for you if you want to work with Breanne in any way. Before we kind of wrap up, my lovely, I would love to know, but to be honest, I would love to interview you again just to talk all about your travels and the liberation and the learnings that came out of that, because I feel like we could talk for bloody hours. But
we could do a separate episode. There's some weird stories in there.
Yes, please. Let's book that right now while we're recording. Walnut, you heard it. We're going to talk again on all the travel things because I just need to know.
That's so funny.
But I feel like from your life experience and everything you've gone through, you are basically a living, breathing walnut. So I would love to know what does being a walnut mean to you as well?
I think being a walnut to me means really creating and living the life that you desire and build. That's a big thing that I've learned in this process, even of building my business, even with marketing. It's really easy, particularly now in the online space. And I'm sure you even find this with your podcast and everything. Like, it's easy to look to other people and be like, oh, this is working for them, or this looks really good. And that's really great to a degree in any realm of your life for inspiration, no matter what career, job, hobby, side hustle you're doing. Especially in the upfront, I think it's really good to look to others for inspiration. And again, look to others that are leading a life that you feel aligned with. However, it takes a lot of courage and bravery, as your friend said, Claire, the compound of being courageous to really live a life that you have designed and stick to it. That's taken a lot for me, just again, building my business, being like, but can I do it this way? Because this feels really good to me. Like, I would like to do it this way, but nobody else is really doing it this way, or the stats say this, or maybe I should be doing this because of whatever. So I think being a walnut to me, and what feels really good, is just like living a life that I've created.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. It's simple, yet beautiful, yet it's just delicious. Thank you so much. I think that's a beautiful analogy of being a walnut. Now, where can I didn't even touch on your podcast. I wanted to get into like the title of your podcast and all the things, but we can talk about that next time. Where, if the walnut listening is like, holy butts, I love this woman, I need to work with her or follow her, how can we get in touch with you? And I will put it in the show notes, Walnut, as I mentioned, but what have you got going on at the moment? How can we work with you? How can we be obsessed with you and listen to you some more?
You're so sweet. So you can follow me on Instagram. Pretty much that is like the hub of where you can access any of my content. So that's at Breanne Burke, BreanneBurke, my first and last name. As I said earlier, my podcast, The Goal, with an L, not a D, Goal Digger Guide podcast. So it's a very similar vibe to kind of as I've been sharing here. And the best way to work with me right now, which I'm so excited about, is my Confident Mindset Accelerator self-paced online course. It just launched on February 6th, and I'm really, really excited. It's literally the best thing I've ever created. It's everything I've learned from mentors, my own certifications, my own experiences in all my travels, literally packaged up into a nice little package with a bow. And it's 5 modules, extremely in depth, with specifically curated homework pieces to go along with each module, because I know from working with so many people, myself, you can learn so much, but if you aren't implementing, things aren't going to change. So this is how you truly get real life shifts and changes in the moment. And then there's also a community portion to hold your ass accountable. So those are the 3 pillars of CMA: education, implementation, and community. So the course is obviously available. That's a link I can send over as well. But for the most part, I can see you on Instagram.
Oh, I love it. And I love all of those little pillars of your self-led stuff. And it makes it so much more accessible to have that, but also the little accountability piece, I think, is like, it's so important. So I love that you incorporate that and that you actually have spoken to that as well. Walnut, if you enjoyed this episode, please get in touch, take a little screenshot and share and tag us on the Instagrams or the social medias. We'd love to hear from you. And Breanne, I appreciate your time. It was so lovely to get to chat to you. I feel so privileged and excited and happy to have actually connected. This has been a really, really amazing chat. And like I said, I would love to talk more about more things. So thank you so much for visiting us today. It's been such a pleasure.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This has been really lovely. I really appreciate it.
Amazing. All right. Well, Walnut, have a happy Walnut Wednesday, and I will talk to you next week. And Bree, again, I love you. Thank you.
Bye.